probability that is associated with the probability of an event given that another event has already occurred. Okay. So suppose the event B occurs first. Okay, event B occurs first. So then B becomes the sample space. So if another event A occurs after B has occurred, then of course B is already known to us, right? So any event that happens after B has happened, that will be heavily conditioned on B. So meaning we write that A occurs given that B has already occurred. What is called the conditional probability, right? So since B has already occurred, so it means B becomes the sample space. So that probability of A given B is probability A intersection B, which is basically the shaded area, right? Probability of no, that is not the shaded area. It is probability of A given B is probability of A intersection B divided by PB, right? So it is probability of A intersection B divided by PB. So we have to normalize it. So this is what is called as the conditional probability. Now conditional probability, as simple as it seems, it might get more and more interesting and sometimes complicated as we add more and more layers of complexity. So the next extension is the theorem of probability, total probability. Now total probability is an interesting situation that happens when an event cannot be observed directly. Suppose an event occurs, but it cannot be observed directly, or probabilities cannot be assigned directly. Rather, it can be assigned conditionally based on the number of other events which span the sample space, right? So like for example, one example that I can take is, see, whether you are going to office, say if you are late for office, or if you arrive at office in time, right? So these two events, it can be heavily conditioned on one very important event, that is weather. So if the weather is good, that there is no rain or no snowfall or whatever, no storms, then the probability that you reach the event that you reach at the office in the right time, that can be expressed with with some level or some denomination, right? But let's say if you are under the weather, if you suffer from delays due to heavy rainfall or heavy storms, right? So then you automatically get delayed. So probability of your arrival at an office at a correct time, right? That event A sometimes might be conditioned on whether the weather is good, or the weather is moderately bad, or weather is extremely bad. Now moderately bad, extremely bad can be labeled as B1, B2, B3 and so on. I mean, you can condition them with as many number of events as you want to, as long as they span the sample space, they are mutually exhaustive, right? And they add up to 1. That is, the probabilities add up to 1. So then the event A, that is probability of you arriving on time or arriving late, that gets conditioned by the events B1, B2, B3, B4, so that you can write it as PA is equal to PA given B1 into PB1. Well, what is this? If you look at the first, let's say on the first box, right? The first box on the left. So what do you see? That is the intersection of B1 and A given B1, right? Is the intersection of B1 and A given B1, right? No, sorry, it is the intersection of A and B1. I'm sorry. So on the extreme left, what you have is you have intersection of A and B1. So it is like A intersection B1. So how can you write that? You can write it as A given B1 into PB1 by using this formula, right? So PA given B is PA intersection B divided by PB, right? So similarly, if you take it on the other side, it becomes PA given B into PB is PA intersection B. So which is exactly what we are writing here. That is PA intersection B is given, A intersection B1 is given by PA given B1 into PB1. Similarly, for the next shaded part, the common part, that is between B2 and the green part, right? That is intersection of A and B2, that is PA intersection B2. That would be given by PA given B2 into PB2. Similarly for B3, PA intersection B3 would be given by PA given B3 into PB3, and so on. So what you can do is you can sum them up so that your total probability, now this is very important, your total probability PA, it becomes summation of the PA given BIs into PBIs, right? That is PA given BI into PBI, everything put under the summation. So PA given BI is what? These are the conditional probabilities, right? So let us take a quick example. It's basically the same example, the same example put with numbers. There is a possibility, the example reads as there is a possibility of rain or snow tomorrow, right? Tomorrow there is a possibility. Well, when I took this example, I was doing my PhD, right? So as you can understand, I was doing my PhD in Canada. So there snowfall is a very common occurrence, right? So this example is taken from possibly from Yang and Tang's book, where these people, they belong to the Western world, right? And where snowfall is quite common. I mean, you may not associate with this one, but you can still understand. There is a possibility of rain or snow tomorrow, but not both. The probability of rain is 40%, while the probability of snow is 60%. If it rains, the probability that I will be late for work is 20%. Now, this is the conditional probability, right? So this is the first conditional. If it rains, the probability that I will be late for my work is 20%. If it snows, the probability of being for Lucy, why is that so? Because when it snows, the surface of the road becomes extremely skiddy, right? Slippery, and a lot of cars, they sort of turn completely in 360 degrees because of lack of friction. They can slip, they can slide. I mean, they will not slide, they will slip, and sometimes they can even topple because of the lack of friction. And accidents can happen. So definitely, whenever there is snow, that conditional probability of getting late, it increases. So what is the probability that I will be late for work tomorrow? So we have to define the events. Let R be the event that it rains tomorrow, S be the rain it snows tomorrow, and L be the event that I will be late for my work. So PL will be heavily conditioned by PL given R, that is probability of me getting late conditioned on rain, and probability of me getting late conditioned on snowfall. So P, R, PS, I mean, look at them, they add up to 1, right? And PL given R and PL given S are given by 0.2 and 0.6. Now what is PL? PL will be PL given R into PR plus PL given S into PS, right? So the total probability that of me getting late is 0.44. That is, there is a 44% chance that I will be late for work. So as you can see, it is lying somewhere between 20% and 60%, but observe that it is not 40%, it is 44%, right? So this is a tentative, like, what should I say, a very simplistic for conditional probability, or conditional probability, or total probability, because these things are very important when we do Bayesian parameter estimation or Bayesian updating. Okay, just give me a second. I'll have to arrange myself a little bit. Yeah, okay. All of you are able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let us come to Bayes theorem. Okay, sometimes it is called BAYE apostrophe S theorem, right? Some people call it Bayes theorem. I prefer to call it Bayes theorem. Now Bayes theorem is a very, it's a very, what should I say? It is an alternate paradigm of finding probability. Okay. The other paradigm that we got used to was the frequentist approach, where we took help of the axiomatic definitions or relative frequency based definitions, right? They sometimes called the frequentist approach, but there is also an alternative approach for calculating probabilities, and this is more realistic because this is based on subjective understanding or degree of belief. Okay. Now I'll give you few philosophical examples, like one philosophical example, and then I'll give you a practical example so that you can understand what is going on. Okay. A philosophical example, it might sound little, what should I say, partisan or one-sided, but please bear with me. For now, I don't have a better example to give. Okay. This is the example that I always tell to all my students. All of them, whoever has taken the course, they are very conversant with this example. So back in those days, those who are doing masters now, you are having a good time. You're sitting in your home and doing the classes, right? Back in my master's days, of course, when I got selected, I had to go to IIT by train. In those days, we were not that rich, or let's say the gross domestic product or the per capita income was not that much that we could afford flights, right? So we had to travel by train. And I was supposed to go to IIT Kanpur to join the master's program on the month of July. And in those days, the dacoities or thefts in train dacoities were very common, very common. Any train that would go through Bihar, right? Or, there were two routes. There's one route that goes through Patna, another one that goes through Mughal Sarai, right? Gaya and Mughal Sarai. So the route that used to go through Patna was, if a train goes through that route, there is a heavy chance or high chance or high probability that there will be a train robbery. Okay. And vice versa, if you took the better route, you would not get robbed. Okay, the probability of getting robbed is less. So definitely, I was asking a lot of people. I was trying to get a lot of opinions from a lot of people that please suggest me what should I do. A lot of them suggested that look, take Rajdhani Express. I said, but Rajdhani Express also makes certain stops. But then they said, well, chances are very less that Rajdhani can get robbed because there will be heavy securities, and even if the Rajdhani stops at certain places, the doors and windows are usually closed. So the doors are, most importantly, the doors are closed and there will not be any robbery. Okay. So, okay, I took a lot of opinions, and then what came to me that there is a 50% chance of getting robbed if I go through Patna route. That is Patna, via Patna to Kanpur. And then there is around 20 to 25% chance of getting robbed if I take the the Gaya Mughalsarai route. That is route 1. Okay. So it's slightly less. Now, what sort of probability is this? This probability is not based on any experiment. This is based on degree of belief or prior knowledge, right? You are trying to get some prior knowledge by asking a lot of people who would have gone through those routes. Well, that knowledge, they might have first-hand information, or they might have been giving you the second-hand information as well. Both of them are possible. So even the prior knowledge can also be a second-hand or a third-hand information, or it could be a first-hand information, right? So you don't know. Prior knowledge is a prior knowledge. So it is based on experience. Now you perform the random experiment. That is, you make the train journey, right? And then that I ended up reaching Kanpur without getting robbed. So what happened? The fact that I have arrived at Kanpur, and the next guy who comes to Kanpur, I would tell them that, look, if you come by Gaya route and take Rajdhani Express, most likely your probability of getting theft or robbed is almost like 5%. See, my probability that the prior knowledge that I had was close to 25%, 0.25. But now it suddenly got updated, and now it has got revised to around 0.05. Right. Now, why is that the case? Because there is also another thing called observation or likelihood. That is, you are performing the experiment. That is, you're taking the train journey or making the train journey. So this is called the observation or the likelihood, right? So your posterior probability, it becomes a product of the prior and the likelihood. And every time you perform an experiment, your posteriors are always going to get updated. So your posterior becomes a prior for some other guy, which you are going to pass on. You will tell them that, look, if you come by Rajdhani Express, it is only like there's a 5% chance that gets robbed, right? No, it's an example, but this is one of which always get robbed, right? Not nowadays. Nowadays things have improved a lot. The quality of trains and things like that, the vigilance have improved, and the robbery has almost gone out of place, right? But not in those days. I'm talking about early 2000s, that is 2003, 2004, and around that time. Okay. So with that bit of understanding, let us come to similarly, I mean, even this route was also famous. This route which used to go through, I mean, anybody who has traveled to Kolkata, I mean, travel to Guwahati-Kolkata route or Kolkata-Guwahati route. I mean, there was this place in Murshidabad district, I mean, in those days, where robbery used to be very common, right? So it is not that just one of those routes is notoriously bad. There are so many routes which used to be bad in those days. There were routes through Chambal, right? The Chambal Valley, right? Which were again notoriously bad and known for robbery. So it's not just that one route was bad or worse compared to the others, but it mattered to me because I happened to cross through them, right? So let us now come back to a civil engineering example. In order to ensure the quality of concrete material used in RCC construction, concrete cylinders are collected at random from the concrete mixes delivered to the construction site by a mixing plant. So this is how the construction happens. A lot of you are coming with construction experiences. I'm pretty sure that some of the PhD students who have joined, they have an experience working in a construction company. So they would know it very well. I mean, even better than me, because I've never worked for a construction company. Okay. So concrete, how does it work? So there's like a batch plant where mixing gets done, and concrete cylinders are collected at random from the concrete mixes to the construction site, delivered to the construction site by a mixing plant. Now, why they are collected at random? For tasting. So you would like to test whether these concrete cylinders, they have certain quality, that is, they look convincing, that is, they pass the compressive strength, they have the requisite compressive strength, and there are no surface cracks and things like that. Okay. So past records show that 80%, now this is the prior knowledge, past records show that 80% of the concrete mixes are good. Okay. So 80% being good is still, I would say, in olden times it was okay, but nowadays this 80% is no longer considered as good. It has to be around 95%, 90 to 95%, right? Otherwise we are in trouble. Past records show that 80% of the concrete mixes are good. I have to hide this. Let one of those cylinders be tested for compressive strength, right? Now one of these cylinders are taken at random and it is tested for compressive strength, and the reliability of the test is 90%. See, we are adding one more layer of uncertainty. That is, this test itself is also not foolproof, right? So whenever you test something, 4 things can happen. I mean, than their entire lifetime because of this COVID, right? So many people who didn't have COVID got tested COVID positive. So many people who didn't have COVID, didn't have COVID, they got tested positive. People who, there were instances of people who had COVID, but they got tested negative. So there are actually four possibilities. One is called true positive, one is called false positive, one is called true negative, another one is called false negative. Here we are only concerned with 2 things, true positive and false positive, right? Well, also the other situations also naturally come up, right? So reliability of this test is 90%, means that probability that a concrete cylinder that passes the test is good, right? That is 90%, and probability that a concrete cylinder that passes the test is bad, that is 10%, right? So we have to, what do we have to do? We have to basically define the total quality, probability of total quality of concrete, which is, say, let's say PT, and then two events, that is G. Let's say define a good quality concrete is as G, and concrete cylinder that passes test as T. So as you can see, because of this conditioning, reliability of test being 90%, there will be two situations. That is, one will be T given G. Another one will be T given G complement or G prime. So your T given G, that is T given G, that is probability that a concrete cylinder that passes the test is good, right? Probability that a concrete cylinder that passes the test, given that the quality of concrete is good, is given by PTY T given G, right? Now that is 0.9. Similarly, there will be probability that a concrete cylinder that passes the test, given that the quality of concrete is not good, even then it also passes the test, right? Now that one is 0.1, that is PT given G prime. Now the question that we ask Right. So this is, what is this? These are the observations. P t given g or t given g prime. These are observations, because you are making this out only by performing the test, right? Now, what is P g given t? Now, this is the posterior. That is probability that a good quality or a concrete cylinder is of good quality, given that it passes the test. So this is sometimes called the a posteriori probability. So this is the probability that you are not going to find out based on experiment, but you are going to calculate by using the Bayes rule, right? So what is this called? This is called the posterior probability, which is probability that a concrete cylinder is good, given that it passes the test. So how do we find its value? So we apply Bayes theorem. Now what is the Bayes theorem? The Bayes theorem is this: Pg given T is Pt given G into Pg, right? And divided by the total probability, which is Pt given G into Pg plus T given G prime into Pg prime, right? Remember the total probability theorem, in which the Pt, that is Pt, was heavily conditioned. What is the denominator? It is basically the Pt, the total probability. Now that is kind of conditioned both on G and G prime. In the previous example, it was conditioned on B1, B2, B3, B4, and so on. In this case, there are only two possibilities, G and G prime, right? So let us take the numbers. What is Pt given G? It is 0.9. What is Pg? That is the prior knowledge, which is 0.8. Right. Remember that Pg is 0.8. So all of you are able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So can you quickly calculate what will be Pg given T? So what will it be? It will be 0.9 into 0.8 divided by 0.9 into 0.8 plus 0.1 into 0.2. What is T given G prime? It will be 1 minus Pt given G. That is 1 minus 0.9.
0.973. Yes, sir.
So it is coming out to be 0.973.
97.
Now can you see? Oh, it's okay. It is okay. 0.97, 0.973. That is fine. Doesn't matter. Let's concentrate on the first two after decimal. Now tell me, what conclusions you can arrive? You started with the degree of belief of what? 80%. Your degree of belief is given by what? Pg, right? Pg is your priori probability. If you look, so your Pg is 80%. So your Pg is the prior probability, and Pt given G is basically your observation, right? So what was your observation? Your observation was that if let one of these cylinders be tested for compressive strength, right? Now there is one catch, one small flaw here. I will not say it is a flaw, but it's a gap in the argument. You are assuming that you are okay. I will not tell. Can you tell me what is one flaw in the argument, in this argument? Or what is one of the gaps in the argument, which is very important, or let's say one of the important points that you can easily miss? or let's say an assumption. So based on this calculation, the important assumption is that you are testing it. You are testing that cylinder, right? And it passes the test, right? Only then your numerator will be PT given G into PG, and your PG gets updated to 0.973. So what has happened? Your degree of belief that, you know, roughly 80% of the samples are good, it just got updated to 0.973 because the test that you carried out, which has 90% reliability, that is, which again has its own uncertainty, that test was carried out and it turned out to be positive. That is, it gave you a perfect result, right? So, but if it had been the other way around, let's say if you perform the test and the concrete cylinder fails, what will be your answer? Can you quickly check, because I don't have the numbers for me. Okay. So let's say the test is carried out and the concrete cylinder indeed fails. So how will your degree of belief get updated? भाई थोड़ा जल्दी करो. Hey, are you there or have I lost you? क्या हो गया भाई? कोई बताओगे भी कुछ?
.7%.
Are you able to see my screen? Is it?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
तो कितना आ गया PG given T?
2.77.
2.77%.
Yes, sir.
2.7%.
2.7%. That is 2.7 divided by 100. Of course, it has to be from 80%. Now it has suddenly got reduced to 2.7%. Right.
Yes.
So are you getting the feeling? Are you getting the feeling for what is Bayesian updating, or how are we updating our knowledge, our prior knowledge, with the observation and getting the posterior?
Yes, sir.
Is this understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, see, you can do a lot of interesting things. What you can do, you can do it yourself. I don't have to do it for ask you to do it. But what you can do is, you can just do for fun. That is, take all the possibilities. Do a first test. Let's say the first test turns out to be the concrete failure, right? So the compressive strength test, it yields a concrete failure, right? So you have just calculated it, which is 0.027 or 2.7%. And let's say the other situation is when you perform the test and the concrete cylinder passes the test. Suppose you perform another test, okay, and you then do the two possibilities. That is, let's say you carry out another test, you test another concrete cylinder, and let's say the concrete cylinder passes the test, right? Now again, this will be based on what? Your previous observation, whether in the first test, whether it was a success or failure, etc. So if it was a success, then success will have, it's like a branch of a tree, right? So you can say the test, right? So it has two branches, success, failure, right? Then the success will have again two branches, success and failure. And the failure will also have two branches, success and failure. It means what? You can update your observation, update your posterior probability based on what is PG given T1. T1 means the first test. So you can find out what is PG given T1, T2, meaning that is it is conditioned not only that is PG given T2, but it is again conditioned on T1, or PG given T1, T2, right? Even if your second test turns out to be a success or it turns out to be a failure, you can update those probabilities, right? But you have to remember that it is contingent on, or it depends on PG given T1 or PG given T for the first test. So have you understood this point? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
किसको समझ में नहीं आया वो बताओ, पूछो. किसको समझ में नहीं आया?
Sir, what I understood is that if we get PG knowing T, it is coming out to be 0.973. Then for the next test, we will take P T/G as 0.973, and then we'll conduct the next test.
Right.
Okay.
But then the other possibility also comes, right? So if for the first test there is a failure, if it is 2.7%, then you have to take, for the next test you will have to take your PG as 0.027, right?
And then we'll take PT.
Then your PT by G can have, your PTG by G can also have two cases, right?
Yes. Yes.
Your PTG by PT given G also can have two cases, right? I mean, meaning either the second test is a success or it is a failure, right?
In the second case, when the test fails, then we will update PT/G complement.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if it becomes successful, then you update PT given G. Like, it is not updating, it is the likelihood basically. All right. Basically, you are substituting the correct numbers. That's what I mean to say. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now I will quickly move on. Well, these things you can study from Yang and Tang's book, has few excellent examples. You can go through them, right? Just like conditional probabilities, we can also define conditional density functions for bivariate random variables or multivariate random variables. If xy is a continuous bivariate random variable with joint PDF of x comma y, fxy, then the conditional PDF of y given that capital X equals to x, fy given x, right? Fy given x, again under brackets small y given small x, that is equal to, it is defined as p, that is fxy divided by fx. That is, you take the joint PDF and you divide by the marginal PDF. Now why fxx? Because you are saying that it is conditioned on x, that is x has already occurred. X has already occurred means that that marginal density information is already known, right? The marginal density information is already known. So once the marginal density is, proper marginal density is known, you can find out the conditional density. Similarly, if x given y is x of y, x by y is given by f, the joint density divided by the marginal density in the y direction, and that is in the along the y variable, right? So we can find out conditional densities. Again, this thing can be, you can make you can sort of create a nested structure. That is, you can add more and more random variables and create a more nested structure, right? You can take, let's say, x, y, z, and you can easily prove that, let's say, if we start with this, fy given x is equal to fxy given divided by fxx. So your fxy will be fy given x into fx, right? So now, if I have three random variables x, y, z, then fz, that is fxyz, will be given by fz given x comma y into fxy. Now fxy will again be, you can sort of again condition it so that it becomes fxyz becomes fxyz is equal to fz given x and y. That is the second order conditional density, the bivariate conditional density function, multiplied by fy given x, and finally multiplied by fx. That is fxyz is equal to fz given x comma y into fy given x into fx, right? So this has to be very clear. Okay, so this is fxyz. So this conditioning can be extended to any number of random variables. Now this is very important. See, I'm only giving you things which are very important. The rest of the things you can study around them. You have books from which you can read, but these are the important points that you should not miss. Now coming to, how do we make use of conditional density functions? Now we have already studied maximum likelihood. So in order to maximum likelihood method is a parameter estimation method, right? So in order to move to Bayesian parameter estimation, we have to sort of motivate the discussion that why do we need Bayesian parameter estimation, right? So first we need to relook at maximum likelihood and what are its problems. Say, let us take an example of maximum likelihood. Okay, if that's one of the things that you might be thinking, that sir has not shown us an example of maximum likelihood on the whiteboard, believe me, it's the same thing you are going to do again when you will do Bayesian estimation. So it's basically duplicating the effort. So I thought of saving it for the Bayesian update, because as you will see, while doing a Bayesian parameter estimation or parameter estimation using Bayesian Bayes rule, we need to estimate the likelihoods first. So that you will see. So let us now take a quick look into the likelihood and its demerits. Let's say I have a data set which is D. I mean, that data set D is x1 to xn. Okay. And let's say we want to fit basically we want to find out the maximum likelihood for binomial distribution. Okay. Or let's say Bernoulli trial, does not matter, because that permutation term is not going to affect. Okay, that does not play a major role. Let's say we want to do for a Bernoulli trial, make it simple. So we have m heads and n-1 tails. Okay, so what do we do is we first form the likelihood function. And what is the likelihood function? It is by definition the product of all the probability density functions. So we are assuming a likelihood model, right? Sorry, we are assuming a Bernoulli model, a Bernoulli distribution model, right? So you basically have to you first assume the model of the distribution, which is Pxn given mu, right? Mu means the parameters, and then you take the products for all xn's or xi's, that is starting from n equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 up until capital N. Instead of summation, what we are doing is we are finding out the product function. So if you write down the pi function, you get n is equal to small n is equal to 1 to capital N mu to the power xn into 1 minus mu to the power 1 minus xn. Now why xn? Because our observations are x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, x6, x7 up until x capital N. Right. So when you put small n is equal to 1, your small xn becomes x1. Right. So now this likelihood function is slightly tricky to deal with. Right. So it's a product function. So what do? Is we take log on both the sides, and log of a product becomes what? It becomes a summation. So you take log of on both the sides, and the product, if you take log of the product, it simply becomes a summation by the property of the logarithms, right? So this is what you get. And then what do? What is the next step? There's one missing step here. Can anybody tell me what do I do with log natural PD given mu? That is the first, second, third line. What do I do with that?
सर अप्लाई कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटी सर.
बक अभी कोई कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटी अभी तक आया ही नहीं यहाँ पे. मैक्सिमम लाइक्लीहुड पढ़े हो क्या? डिड यू रीड मैक्सिमम लाइक्लीहुड? What do we do once we find out the log likelihood function? What is the next step we do? पढ़े नहीं हो? Tell me that you have not studied.
सर भूल गए सर.
Somebody else, please. Anybody who has studied maximum likelihood? What is the missing step here? What is the missing step here?
So differentiation.
Differentiate what? What with what? Differentiate what with respect to what? Differentiate means nothing, right?
Yes, I think we can differentiate with respect to mu and set.
Differentiate with respect to mu.
1 second, sir.
So differentiate log natural P D given mu with respect to mu, and then set it to what?
0, sir.
Okay. So can you please do it and tell me what is going on? So are you getting this? Your mu maximum likelihood, is it coming out to be 1 by n, n small n equals to 1 to n xn? Is that what it is coming to here, out to be? Yes or no? Okay, it's still it's taking far too much time. तो उतना तो time में afford नहीं कर सकता. So I'll have to move on. So let us say you take it at its face value, or you continue working with it as I keep giving the lecture. You know, 1 or 2 students might still want to work with it. You know, take the derivative with respect to mu and set it to 0. Okay, and tell me what you are getting. So suppose we fit maximum likelihood with only 3 observations of a Bernoulli trial. Basically, our D is only x1, x2, x3. And all these observations, let's say, turns out heads. All these observations, let's say they turn out heads. It is like one of your IPL team captains, they're going out for a toss, and every single time he calls heads. And it turns out to be heads. Okay. So your D becomes 1, 1, 1. And maximum likelihood, your mu becomes 1. Right. So it means, in prediction means that all the future tosses will land up with heads. Do you see that there is some flaw in this argument? Is it possible? Physically possible? You may get 3 tosses with heads, but does it really mean that the 4th toss will turn off with heads? Physically?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Right. So that means what? This is one of the issues with maximum likelihood. Means that is, if you have limited number of observations, what it does is it gives you a very biased prediction or biased estimate of mu, right? It gives a very biased estimate of the parameters, right? Or biased prediction, which is sometimes also called overfitting. Okay. It is also sometimes called overfitting, right? So it is sometimes called as overfitting. This is the problem of overfitting, right? So because of this, as you can see, that when you have limited number of observations that you can make, the number of observations is limited, right? That is, you cannot perform, let's say 30 or 40 random experiments. You can only perform 2 or 3 or at the most 4 random experiments, which is the case in real life, right? You cannot afford to perform 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 experiments, random experiments. That becomes too expensive. Either it becomes too expensive or it becomes impractical. Certain situations it can be impractical, certain situations it can be expensive, time consuming. So we have to live with the fact that the number of random experiments that you can perform in real life will be scarce. They will not be plentiful, right? So we have to find out a way by which we can estimate the probabilities or estimate the parameters of a distribution when we have limited number of observations. See, for your probability paper plot, you would have seen that the number of data points was very, I mean, what was it? I think 3 observations, right? 40 or 50. Did you practice, anybody? Did anybody practice PPP? Yes or no? किसी ने प्रैक्टिस किया है? भाई तुम लोग बोलोगे नहीं तो I cannot teach. So if you keep your mouth shut, then tell me that whether I should stop the class and leave. Keeping your mouth shut is not the way. Trust me. Are you able to hear me? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
तो किसी ने प्रैक्टिस किया था तो पीपी प्लॉट किसी ने प्रैक्टिस किया था, प्रोबेबिलिटी पेपर प्लॉट और क्यूक्यू प्लॉट? सो आई एम टेकिंग नो फॉर एन आंसर. ठीक है, तुम लोग बात तो करोगे नहीं, छोड़ो. I don't know, sometimes why am I teaching you? It's like a sheer wastage of time. So okay, so based on the flaws of maximum likelihood, the next best approach is the Bayesian update. So how can we use the Bayesian Bayes rule to find out the parameters of the distribution? So again, we call back the total probability theorem, the theorem of total probability. Now this is expressed in slightly cryptic form here. Okay, so remember in the total probability theorem, what do we have? What did we have? We had a summation. That is, we had finite number. But let's say in real life, I mean, it can always be replaced by an integral, right? So we can write the integral form as px given theta into p theta given d into d theta. Are you getting this by any chance? I'm pretty sure it's a bouncer. ये समझ में आया?
No, sir.
Okay, let us take the d away. Let us take the d away. Okay, let us take the d away from the expression. What does it become? It becomes px is equal to px is the vector of observations. That is, x is equal to x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, x6. It's like a vector, right? Let's say x1 to x10. So what do we have? What is the total probability theory? In that case, it becomes p x1 given theta, right? Let's say I have only one distribution parameter. Let's say I'm only talking about an exponential distribution. So there is only one theta, right? Make it scalar. So what can I write using the total probability theorem? I can write it is sigma px1 given theta into p theta plus px2 given theta into p theta plus px3 given theta into p theta plus px4 given theta into p theta plus px5 given theta into p theta. Right? That part, is that part right?
Yes.
While writing the total probability, can I write like this? Px1, let's say I have a scalar only one parameter, let's say exponential distribution. So my theta is only one, it's not a vector, right? So what can I write? The total probability theorem as summation of px1 given theta into p theta plus px2 given theta into p theta. My theta is same, the distribution parameter, it is not going to change, right? So that's what I can write, right?
Yes, sir.
So then it becomes, then it becomes what? It becomes, if I generalize it as a vector real expression, then I can write it as p x vector given theta into p theta d theta, right? That much is clear. So now if I condition, if I apply that nested, that chain rule, if I apply the chain rule, the one that I showed you 2-3 slides ago, so I can easily add one more conditioning, that is, I can easily generalize it and I can say that px given a training data set, right? A training data set or observation data, which is d, small d, italics d, right? That could be given by integral p x given theta into p theta given d into d theta, right? Is this understood now? Try doing this, try understanding this from the point of view of total probability theorem and write it down on a piece of paper. Okay, it should not be difficult at all. So first write it without D, then bring D into the picture for conditioning. What does it mean? Physically, it means that although X is a vector which could possibly be observed, let's say, for n number of samples, but we can only have a smaller training set, which could be only a subset of X. That's why it is conditioned on the observed data, which can be a much smaller subset of the X vector. Is that understood? So that's why this general expression. So then Px given theta can be easily computed, right? So if we now appreciate the fact that Px given theta is actually the likelihood, okay? It is actually the likelihood, right? We have to assume some form of likelihood, right? And P theta given D, now that's a Dicey parameter. Now that guy is called the parameter posterior density function. So if theta is the parameter, so P theta given D is actually the parameter estimate, right? In probability paper plot, you are not finding out the distributions, right? But in Bayesian estimation, the first step is we find out the posterior distribution of the parameter. So the Bayesian estimate of any parameter theta for any distribution for a training data set D is given by using the Bayes rule again. See, in the first one, for the first is total probability, and in the second one, which is the parameter update, we are using the Bayes rule. P theta given D is equal to P D given theta into P theta over P D. Now, what is P theta? P theta is the prior. What is P D given theta? P D given theta is the likelihood. See, can you recognize the likelihood here? P D given theta or D given mu is the same as this P D given theta. Theta is the parameter, right? Now again, for PD, that is the denominator, total probability, the theorem of total probability, we can write PD as PD given theta into P theta D theta, right? So you are repeatedly applying the Bayes rule and the theorem of total probability, right? So let us take few examples to bring home this point. You will not understand this easily, and don't worry, I'm not going to rush through it, but I'm giving you a gist of all the materials that will come in the next 3-4 days, or maybe in the next Saturday or Friday, at least 2 or 3 lectures, the whiteboard lectures that I normally would post every week, but for some issues this week, some personal issues, I couldn't find time. Okay, but rest assured it will come in the next few days. So let us say if we go for the Bernoulli trial, the same example. So in the same example, what do we have? If we apply Bayes theorem, sometimes what is important to know is you don't need to find out PD, or PD could be complicated. Why it could be complicated? Because if your number of distribution parameters becomes more than 2, then it becomes a triple integral, which is very difficult to evaluate. All that you can do is you can evaluate single integrals. Double integral हो गया अभी तो हाथ से तुम नहीं कर पाओगे. So you'll have to take recourse to computational techniques, which I'm not going to talk about today. उसके लिए time है. Markov chain, Monte Carlo simulations and things like that. ठीक है? वो सब बाद में आएगा. लेकिन पहले ये समझो that finding out the denominator is not easy, and sometimes it is not important. Why? Because it is just a normalizing constant. अगर तुम integrate करोगे, what are you going to get? PD is just a constant. It's nothing. It's not going to be. It's a probability. Probability is what? A number. It's a constant or a normalizing constant. So it is not going to affect the Bayesian estimate, right? So we can sometimes write for simplicity. This is for simplicity we are telling. Complexity तो हम लोग हमेशा देख सकते हैं, but first we try to simplify things understand them at a simpler level, and then look at the complex things, right? तो इसमें क्या करना है पहले? Bernoulli trial के लिए you already know the likelihood, which is PD given mu. Now what you do is now you multiply it with a prior, right? Can all of you see this expression? Yes नहीं बोलोगे तो आगे नहीं बढ़ूंगा.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
ठीक है. तो what can we see? What are the observations? The prior itself is a random variable. Can you see? So what does it mean? Your parameters of the distribution themselves are random variables. यहाँ पे distribution parameter और deterministic नहीं रहा. They have become random variables. Because you see the prior, your prior is a distribution. It is given as mu given a naught comma b naught. Now what form of prior do we assume? It depends on the type of problem we are dealing with. Let's say if we take a beta prior, beta distribution. So this is what is going to happen. It becomes product of likelihood into the beta prior. ठीक है? After some manipulations, you can find that the posterior becomes a beta distribution, right? So इसको अगर as n increases, you see that the expected value as n increases, your an tends to m, bn tends to n minus m, your expected value of mu, it becomes the likelihood value, and variance of mu, it becomes 0. Now this is a beautiful result. What does it say? That as n become large, your Bayesian estimate, it starts to give the same estimated value as the likelihood estimate, right? And the variance of mu, it tends to become 0. It means what? When the variance of a random variable becomes 0, it no longer remains random. So your mu, which was a random variable to start with, its variance tends to 0 as n tends to a large number. So that is when n, the number of samples, is a large number, what you end up getting is the same estimate as given by the maximum likelihood. Now this is the first important result. Don't you worry, because इसको इन सब चीजों को मैं डिटेल में दिखाऊंगा. Now this is just a trailer. This is just like a sequel of what is going to come. ठीक है? आज सिर्फ मैं conceptual understanding बता रहा हूँ कि so that you can grasp the whole conceptual idea. That is get an initial feel as to what are we going to do. क्योंकि जब मैं video lecture post करूंगा, I will have to keep it short, and there are so many things that I will not be able to put inside them, right? So you better understand some key concepts here. ये prediction है, ये तुम खुद देख लेना, ठीक है? Now to the next important example. This is a very, very, very important example. This is going to explain, this clears up all the concepts of Bayesian estimation. Suppose we want to estimate a Gaussian distribution, one parameter Gaussian distribution. You may laugh at me, सर ये क्या होता है? Gaussian distribution का तो 2 पैरामीटर होता है. हाँ जी सर, हमको भी मालूम है. यहाँ पे म्यू और सिग्मा दोनों पैरामीटर होते हैं, right? But the point is, it becomes an obnoxiously difficult problem to handle if I have both mu and sigma as unknowns. Okay, to estimate. So let us simplify the problem and consider the case where the sigma is known. Let's say standard deviation is known. ठीक है, इतना तो पहले समझने के लिए, उसके बाद देखेंगे. तो likelihood function is only a function of the data, right? So we first write down the likelihood function. So it is product of pxn given mu, right? So you write down the likelihood function. Basically, you take Gaussian distribution and you multiply n Gaussian distributions one after another. ठीक है, सिग्मा तो कांस्टेंट है, सिग्मा तो का तो कोई रोल ही नहीं है. द ओनली अननोन पैरामीटर इज म्यू. दिस हैज a Gaussian shape as a function of mu. So it looks like it has a Gaussian shape, right? अगर sigma भी constant हो जाए, it will still have a bell-looking shape. It's no problem. Now what we have not done is we have not multiplied it with prior. So what we will do is we will multiply it with prior, and we will write the Bayes rule in a simplified version as P mu given x is proportional to Px given mu into P mu. Once again, P mu given x, that is the posterior estimate, a posteriori estimate or a posteriori PDF of mu, that is mean, mu of Gaussian distribution given the data is proportional to the product of the likelihood density multiplied by the prior density. So prior क्या हो गया? Prior is a density function. So it means what? It is easily understood that your parameter mu is no longer deterministic. You are not assuming that it's a deterministic parameter, right? So this is also sometimes called as the probabilistic estimation. See, PP plot and maximum likelihood, these are deterministic estimates. वहां पे कोई probability नहीं घुसता है. Although we are talking about probability paper plot, those estimates are not probabilistic estimates. They are all deterministic estimates. लेकिन ये जो estimate है, this is a probabilistic estimate. Why? Because if you keep varying n, your distribution, posterior distribution का जो नेचर है वो कंप्लीटली चेंज हो सकता है. ठीक है, वो छोटा हो सकता है, बड़ा हो सकता है, स्क्वीज हो सकता है. It becomes deterministic if n is large. After a point in time, you will see that if n is sufficiently large, it becomes deterministic. So on the face of it, Bayesian estimates are probabilistic estimates. ठीक है, तो अभी मैं substitution अगर करूंगा तो यहाँ पे it yields the posterior densities. It becomes a normal distribution of mu given mu n and sigma n square. That is variance of sigma n square. That is the posterior density will be a normal distribution whose parameter is mu n. The mu n is given as sigma, this big expression, right? And sigma n square is given as 1 by sigma naught square divided by, plus n by sigma square. You can see there is something called sigma naught square. Now what is sigma naught square? Can anybody tell me? What is mu naught and sigma naught square? Can you see there are two parameters here, mu naught and sigma naught? ये क्या है? कुछ बोलने की कोशिश नहीं करोगे तो आगे नहीं बढ़ूंगा. बताओ भाई.
So the mu and sigma associated with mu ml.
Thanks for trying. You're there, but not completely there. Yes. So these are mu naught and sigma naught associated with mu. So did we say that we are assuming a Gaussian prior of mu? So if mu is a Gaussian prior, it means mu is a Gaussian distribution with parameter mu naught and sigma naught square. Is that understood? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So what does it mean? Sometimes this is also called as the hyperparameters. These mu naught, sigma naught, these are also called as the hyperparameters. अब इसका there is a quick thing that I could show you here. If a plot shows, I mean, check this plot using a simple MATLAB code. Check what happens when capital N is 1 and let's say n is equal to 10, n is equal to 2, कुछ नहीं, इस एक्सप्रेशन में कुछ म्यू नॉट डालो, कुछ सिग्मा नॉट डालो, डाल के इसको प्लॉट करके देखो क्या होता है, ठीक है। एंड यू विल सी व्हेन n इज ग्रेटर देन 30, ये जो सिग्मा है ना, ये सिग्मा इतना छोटा हो जाता है दैट यू एंड अप गेटिंग ऑलमोस्ट अ डिटरमिनिस्टिक एस्टिमेट। n इज इक्वल टू 0 में स्प्रेड वेरिएंस बहुत ज्यादा है, n इक्वल टू 1 में थोड़ा सा कम हो गया, n इक्वल्स टू 2 में और कम हो गया, n is equal to 10 में और कम हो गया। Where can we see the effect? We can see the effect in this expression. See, 1 by sigma n square is equal to 1 by sigma naught square plus capital N by sigma square. Can you see that? So as n becomes larger and larger, the second term dominates. 1 by sigma naught square becomes very small, and n by sigma square it starts to dominate, right? जब वो dominate करने लगता है, then sigma n square becomes very small, right? Because 1 by sigma n square is large, so your sigma n square is small and sigma n is even smaller, right? फिजिकल रीजनिंग समझ में आ रहा है अभी? ठीक है, इसका डिटेल डेरिवेशन है यहाँ पे, तुम लोग देख लेना थोड़ा सा, ठीक है। ये मैं बाद में बताऊंगा, मतलब आई विल डू इट ऑन द चॉक बोर्ड, बट यू कैन डू इट विद द बैकग्राउंड दैट यू हैव ऑलरेडी गॉट, यू कैन डू द डिटेल डेरिवेशन योरसेल्फ। तो यहाँ पे लाइक्लीहुड पूरा खुल के लिखा हुआ है, कैसे, हाउ टू राइट द लाइक्लीहुड, हाउ टू डिफाइन सर्टेन क्वांटिटीज, देन this is how the likelihood comes, and then finally it simplifies to this. So this is your likelihood. Then you take a prior. If you take your prior, which is equal to p mu, prior is given by p mu, so that is e to the power minus exponential of minus 1 by 2 sigma naught square mu minus mu naught square, right? So which is basically a normal distribution with parameters mu naught and sigma naught square, right? अब इसको don't confuse sigma naught square with sigma square. These are the hyperparameters. Mu naught, sigma naught square. These are the hyperparameters. तो अब क्या करना है, इसको product करना है, and you have to do a very lengthy algebra to finally prove that your posterior the posterior density function of mu, that is mu given d, is basically Gaussian with parameters mu n and sigma n square. Okay, so this is something you can try to prove yourself, but regardless of whether you do it yourself or not, I will still walk you through the steps of it. Okay, but maybe not with Gaussian distribution, मैं किसी और distribution के लेके करूँगा. So once I do it for, let's say, I do it for binomial with uniform prior, I will do it for let's say और किसका करूँ, एक्सपोनेंशियल का करूँगा, ठीक है। वन पैरामीटर फैमिली पहले कर लेता हूँ, पॉइसन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कर लेता हूँ। So once you understand those things very clearly, you will be able to do it on your own, क्योंकि सब कुछ तो दिया हुआ ही है ना। Okay, now ये हाइड शेयरिंग कैसे किया जाता है, या फिर स्टॉप शेयरिंग? आई विल स्टॉप शेयरिंग। ओके, सो शेयरिंग बंद हो चुका है ना,